All right, Dan, thanks. As we continue our team coverage, Storm Track 15 is monitoring a heat dome responsible for bringing hot and humid weather right to our doorsteps. And many of you have been wondering if this heat will make hurricane season worse. Storm Track 15 meteorologist Michael Crowley has the answer to that good question.
We've been pretty hot the past few days, and that is all thanks to something called a heat dome, which is something we've actually recently covered. So we're going to briefly go over that heat dome before we talk about how the heat dome can actually prevent hurricanes from making landfall in our neck of the woods. So let's briefly go over what a heat dome is. So a high pressure is sitting overhead. We have heat at the surface. Whenever that heat starts to rise into the atmosphere, that high pressure essentially says no, we're going to keep it hot down to the surface, and it's going to increase the pressure and increase the temperature. So it's kind of like you have a pot on your stove. You put a lid on top of that, and the water starts to boil a little bit more vigorously, increases the pressure, increases the temperature, and that is essentially what's happening. That is the lid. The high pressure is the lid on top of our pot. So that high pressure is going to compress us, leading to hotter temperatures. That heat becomes trapped, and that is essentially what we are dealing with this heat dome. Now on a broader scale, here is this hot weather that we are seeing. All of it's supplied by the Gulf of Mexico, hot temperatures. And once you supply more of that high pressure directly overhead, just like here, we're going to see that high pressure compress the air right on top of us. But another thing this does, look at the spin of this high pressure. So that's going to lead to a broad easterly flow going across the Gulf. And if we have a hurricane, not a real hurricane, this is a fictional hurricane. Now we're going to incorporate some of this easterly flow. That hurricane is going to try to get right here and counter this shear and move off into Mexico. So we almost like to call this a protective shield, or like a brick wall that this hurricane is heading towards, if there were one heading into the Caribbean. So a little brick wall is a good way of putting this. So we're going to have this hurricane go towards the high pressure and counter it. It can't enter a high pressure. That's why it's called a high pressure. It's going to send everything away from it. That hurricane is going to move off to the west, and we're protected as long as that heat dome is overhead. Now I know we may be baking like broccoli in the meantime, but we may be a little bit more protected from hurricanes. So maybe it's not all that bad. So if you want to see any good questions that you have answered on the air, scan this QR code that you're seeing on your screen. That'll send you over to my email, mcrowley@kadn.com. You can send me all those good questions that you want, and I'll answer them right here on News 15. I'm Storm Track 15, a meteorologist, Michael Crowley. I can't wait to hear those good questions you have for me.